This is Chris Oatley's ArtCast, episode 86, an interview with character designer Justin Rodrigues, part 1. Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of Chris Oatley's ArtCast, the show that goes inside the hearts and minds of successful professional artists. I'm Chris Oatley. I was a visual development artist at Disney before I quit to start my own online art school, the Oatley Academy of Concept Art and Illustration. Find more art instruction and career advice from some of the most inspiring voices in animation, games, comics, and new media at chrisoatley.com. Anya, you're back.
Yes, I am.
You are an international podcast star now. How does that feel?
Oh, I feel so fancy. I'm going to start hiding from paparazzi all over this room. Like, oh my God, I'm so important. Look at me.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it was great having you and Derek and Jeff on the show last time. For those of you who don't know, Anya is the production manager of the ArtCast as well as the Paper Wings show. And what does that mean, Anya? Production manager. Do you want to?
I get to talk to a lot of amazing people. That's basically what it is.
You keep everything running. You keep the show from exploding. You make sure it gets out on time. You keep everybody working together.
I wish my mom listens to this because no one gets it. What do you do? I'm a production manager. Oh, that's a fancy. What do you do?
And you also keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I keep people happy.
Which is extremely important. It's so much more fun when the team is on the show. So thank you. Welcome back.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, and you trained me to be a ninja. I'm always everywhere hijacking your podcast.
We should have you inexplicably show up out of nowhere in the middle of an interview sometime.
Yeah, then we can do like this kind of event, like count how many times when he appears on podcasts.
So what did you think of this interview with Justin Rodrigues?
Oh, it was super insightful.
Yeah, it's really good. He's such a good thinker. That's why I love the guy.
Yeah.
Well, it's one of the reasons. This is part 1 of a 2-part interview. So when you get to the end and you realize, oh, I'd like to hear more, don't worry. Next episode, there will be lots more. We go into greater depth about character design, although there's some really good character design stuff in this conversation. We talk about being decisive in your design. We also talk about that more in the next part 2. And we talk about, this is one I loved, Anya, what to do when you find out you aren't good enough to get a particular job in the industry.
That's a big one. That crushes hearts.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And I love how Justin responded to that.
Me too.
And that's actually the topic we would love to discuss with you, dear listeners, in the comments section associated with this podcast episode. After the show, please go to chrisoatley.com/JR1. That's like Justin Rodrigues and the number 1. And join the conversation in the comments. I am really looking forward to hearing your response to Justin's response to rejection. It's inspiring, and I think it's safe to say that this approach worked out for him because now he's a full-time designer at Red Games. He has a client list that includes Walt Disney Television Animation, Fisher-Price, and at the time of this recording, he has 25.4 thousand followers on Instagram. I'd consider that a success, and he's really just getting started. One could say that on this episode, you get 2 artists for the price of one. Juan Bautista is on the show today.
Yeah, he's here, and he's awesome.
Juan Francisco Bautista Zambrana is going to join us after the Justin Rodrigues interview. Juan, he went through painting drama. Painting drama, for those of you who don't know, is my course on composition, discovering your own visual voice, visual storytelling. We do a lot of stuff in that course, but mostly about composition. Juan went through that course last summer with you, Anya, actually.
Yeah, he did. We were classmates.
So Juan went through that class and then shortly thereafter had a pretty significant career breakthrough. And so he's here to share that story. It's incredibly inspiring for those of you, experiencing doubt or struggle. We're trying to bring you as many inspiring stories that are sort of, stories of artists breaking in right now. And so, of course, it's great to learn from the successful professionals who have gone before us, who broke in 5 years ago or 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But then there's new information to be found in the stories of artists who are breaking in and creating careers right now. And Juan is one of those people. And he's also just one of the most precious people I've ever met in my life. He's amazing.
He is. What does Juan has to do with circus? Let's find out in a while.
Yeah, that's right. I look forward to finding out, even though I already know. So Juan, circus, Justin Rodrigues. It's a fantastic show. Again, chrisoatley.com/JR1. Join the conversation in the comments. And don't forget, we have a top secret project in the works. Everyone seems very excited. Very excited about it, which I'm happy. It makes me very happy. There's been a great response to the two announcements we've made. We announced it first on the Lowish interview, episode 85, the ArtCast right before this, and we announced it on the most recent Paper Wings podcast, which, by the way, I highly recommend. You can find that at chrisoatley.com/PW31. It's Paper Wings episode 31 with a leaky graft. Super inspiring. But if you are interested in our next epic project, go to chrisoatley.com/JR1. Again, Justin Rodrigues 1. Scroll about halfway down the post. You'll see a link that says join the early notification list for the next big announcement. And we'll give you some sneak peeks, and you'll have the option to provide some feedback as we ready this next big project for launch. It's the biggest thing we've ever done. Anya, thanks so much for welcoming the listeners to this episode, and also for your contribution after the Justin Rodrigues interview. Now let's hear from Justin Rodrigues. I'm ready. Are you ready, Anya?
Oh, yes, I am.
Yeah, it's good. All right, here goes. So take us all the way back to when you first realized you had an artistic proclivity. What did that look like? How did that transform into you realizing you could actually be a professional artist?
So, like all kids, I drew, and I've drawn growing up. Actually, when I was really young, my grandfather, he had an office with like drafting tables and all of this stuff, and I would go up there and like make it like my comic studio. Like I'd go up there and like make my own comics and stuff like that, when I was like 11 or 12 years old. So I've always drawn, and I've loved it. And, I had, how to draw comics the Marvel way when I was like 10, and, I even had Bridgmans. I had Bridgmans when I was like 11. Yeah. Because some comic book artist recommended it. So I made my dad go buy it for me. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And I didn't, know any of it. Like I didn't understand it at all.
Yeah. It's not the most digestible of all anatomy books.
I'm looking at it like, this doesn't look like comic books. Like, what's this? Like, I got into high school, and, I actually started playing guitar a lot and joining bands, and I got way into music in high school, and I stopped kind of drawing. So when I got into college, I was like, I want to get into the music industry because I want to be a rock star or whatever. I had to take a calculus class, and I failed it miserably. I think it's the only class I've ever failed in my life. I was actually really good in school and stuff. So I was like, man, I don't want to do this if I have to take this class, because calculus is just absurd. I don't know if you've ever taken calculus.
No, I managed to avoid that. If I remember correctly, there was a bit of scheduling acrobatics that took place during my high school years. And then when I got into art school, there was no math required at all.
Yeah. If you go to art school, you don't have to take, like they actually had at Cal State Northridge, that's where I went to college, they had math ideas. It was called Math Ideas, I think. And that was the artist's math class. So it was like a mixture of like basic algebra and basic statistics, I think. So,
wow.
Yeah, pretty awesome. That one was, and then my calculus teacher was this Russian dude, Mr. Tanushev. And he's a genius, of course. And he thinks we're all geniuses. He's up here with his thick Russian accent, like explaining all of these theoretical math ideas. I'm just like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
That is great.
And I don't know why I didn't drop it. But good thing I didn't, because it's what kind of drove me to do art.
It was the hope that you might someday become a mathematical genius.
Yeah, exactly.
He was doing his job as a teacher and giving you that hope. So Cal State Northridge, and connect the dots there for us. How did that? And did you grow up in SoCal?
No, I actually grew up in SenCal, so Central California, like Fresno.
Oh, right. Yes, we've discussed this before. Right?
Yes. And
so then Cal State Northridge, that makes sense then geographically.
Yeah, my grandma lived down here, so I moved in with her to go to college because I just wanted to get out of Fresno. So. There's nothing going on there, music or art wise. So I decided, for some reason, I never thought I would be good enough draftsman, like artist, to do comic books or, animation or anything like that. So I thought, I'll be a graphic designer because I've always been good at art. I can do graphic design. And the good thing about California State University is you have to take all of your general art classes also. So, I was taking life drawing and all that stuff. Do you know who Will Weston is?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So he actually taught life drawing at Cal State Northridge for one semester only. And that was the semester that I had him. And he kind of changed, I didn't even know character design was a thing until he said something about it. And I was like, that's what I want to do. It just clicked. Wow. So then I changed to animation and I decided, let's do this. Let's try and be a character designer. So.
Good Lord. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So your paradigm at that point was very comics centric. I mean, that was, as far as your picture of commercial art, it was very much kind of comics.
Yeah, totally. Because we didn't have the internet back in those days.
Right. So,
I didn't really know that, I thought animation was actual animation. And I didn't really want to do that because I was like, I can't draw that many drawings. I have ADD. I can't,
right.
I can't do that. God bless the people who can.
Yeah,
but
right.
So, it was comics and it was just a general interest. And I loved animation and I always wanted to get into animation. I just didn't think that there was an avenue for it.
Right.
And as soon as I heard there was, I was like, that's what I want to do.
Right. Yeah. To this day, people will introduce me. This is Chris. He's an animator. And I'm like, thank you.
No, I've had to explain to my family members. So what do you do? I was like, I do visual development and character design. So I draw the things that the other people make move.
Yeah, right.
I don't make them move.
Yeah, right. That's a nice, concise way to describe it.
The movement is key. Yes, that's right. I don't make them actually move.
Yeah.
So.
I just draw pictures.
I just make pictures. Yeah.
What kind of music?
Oh man, hard rock.
Uh-huh.
Straight up screaming and all kinds of awesome stuff.
Like metal or more punk?
Kind of like metal punk combined. It was a weird sound. We actually I had a band, in college and we played the whole Hollywood circuit and all that stuff.
Oh wow.
So it was pretty cool. We played the Whiskey and the Roxy and the Viper Room and all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Wow. What was your band called?
Francine Dancer.
Francine Dancer.
Some LA people know that, she actually had a cable access show. And it's she would just dance for a half an hour on this cable access. This older lady. She would just dance.
That is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Yeah,
and she'd do all these crazy video tricks where it's her superimposed. So she's big in the background, but normal size in the foreground kind of thing, 90s kind of. So,
the soft edges on the vignette. Oh man, that's the
she's transparent but large in the background. It was awesome.
So who were you aware of artists? I mean, individual artists, even if it was comic artists, or how what was your sort of paradigm in that sense when you kind of pre Will Weston's character design baptism?
Yeah, it was mostly comic book artists then. So Jim Lee, all the big guys.
Course, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it once I started getting into animation, in college, then the the animation guys started becoming a bigger influence on me. And then, like, you know, it's funny, like, you know, your tastes start to change and grow as you grow artistically. So, you know, and then now I look at the Jim Lees and all that stuff, and I'm kind of like, that doesn't excite me nearly as much anymore. And, you know, it's like these guys like Jose Lopez and Steve Silver, especially back then, were the big guys, you know, so.
The best.
They still are, yeah. And it's funny because, like, you know, there's still hints of both of those guys in my art today. It's just such an early impression, you know, which is awesome.
Okay, so you were conscious of kind of the go-to guys of comics.
Right.
And how about before that? When did you start making the connection between the pictures that you were sort of interested in, in more of a comics fan kind of way, and the individuals who were making these and various styles and how, Jim Lee draws this way, and you know, you start to notice the nuances in the different ways people draw, and that being there being an inherent message in that, Chris, you should make decisions about the way you draw.
Yeah, I think that started happening around, you know, 11 or 12 when Wizard magazine started coming out. You know, they had articles focused on, you know, the creators and stuff like that, and and you start to really definitely notice that, like, okay, so-and-so draws like this versus, you know, so-and-so drawing like this. And then, you know, you really start to make those connections too of, you know, when I got Bridgman's, I wasn't able to digest it because it is so complex, but I did start to notice, you know, like, this muscle looks like this, and this is how this guy is handling it. It's like you start to put those connections together. And unfortunately, I think for me, the thing that kind of stunted me is, like, I didn't really continue when I was in high school because, like, I got so into the music thing, and, you know, and drawing and comic books aren't cool when you're in high school, you know, so, and I kind of fell into that trap, unfortunately. It's almost like, you know, those were my dark ages, you know, like it was like and then, you know, college was my renaissance, you know, so that's when I kind of picked it back up and then started, you know, making the connections with these new artists that I was finding.
Oh, that's great. So music was not only fun and awesome, but it was also sort of a cooler option in a way.
Oh, yeah. Wow. For me, it was. And I wish, like, now looking back on it, I'm like, you're an idiot, you know? Like, imagine how much better you'd be if you had those 4 years back, you know?
I think about I did a similar thing. I didn't stop drawing. Music got a lot of my time. Yeah. You know, and I actually thought similarly. I was like, maybe we'll have a band and tour. And I don't get it now, but it did seem like, maybe this might work. I don't know why I considered that, but it did, you know, and so therefore it took up a lot of my time.
I didn't stop drawing completely. Like, I was still, you know, sketching and doodling and stuff. And, you know, I still had sketchbooks and all that stuff, but it just wasn't to the extent. I mean, like, honestly, 10 to 12, I was every night on the couch with comic books open, trying to, like, draw and figure this stuff out and, you know, copy what they were doing and, you know, learning anatomy and all this crazy stuff. So I definitely stopped that part of it. But, yeah, it sucks. I wish I didn't, you know? Yeah.
Well, let me encourage you in saying that you're doing quite well.
Oh, thank you.
Quite well, despite the 4 years of rock stardom.
I had a lot of catch up to do. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, I think everybody feels that way, though. Really, I mean, I think we talked to Steven Silver or Jose Lopez. I think they would both say, you know, I wasted a ton of time in blank pursuit.
Right.
Maybe not. Let's ask them.
Probably not.
They're like, I just always drew all the time.
I draw 18 hours a day, buddy.
There's the big secret. Don't waste your time with rock and roll.
Or food or sleep.
That's the amazing thing, though, is that both those guys are great family men. And
I know.
You know, it's just...
makes it even more sickening.
I know. I admire them so much. One more little dot to connect here, specifically your animation consciousness and your consciousness of animators and artists and that kind of thing. So when you took the class with Will Weston in college, what year of school was that?
That was I think that was my sophomore year. Okay, so that was my second.
Pretty early on.
I failed that calculus class real quick.
Okay. So. And previous to that, your animation consciousness was kind of growing, or was it like Will Weston's class and all of a sudden the world of animation opened up?
before that, it was more just movies, really. Like,
Okay.
I mean, it wasn't like I wasn't conscious of individual artists, anything like that. I just knew I liked cartoons. And honestly, and this is going to sound kind of cheesy, but I remember Toy Story had a big impact on me.
Oh, yeah.
So I remember, like, I saw a sneak preview of that. I went with, like, I think my older sister. She won, like, on the radio or something. So we went to a sneak preview in Fresno, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like,
Yeah.
it kind of, really rocked my world. I think that's kind of when the animation consciousness started to kind of click.
Uh-huh.
Before that, it was just like, I like cartoons, you know. I mean, even in high school, I just watched cartoons all the time. Like, it was always on, cartoons or Cartoon Network. Like, I just never stopped watching cartoons. And that's when I made the click for myself was, man, I really like cartoons. Maybe I should do something in animation. And, and then Will Weston came along, and then it was like, okay, now I've found my avenue into animation instead of just making things animated. But other than that, it wasn't like certain artists. It wasn't like, oh, I love Glenn Keane, because I didn't even know they had art of books. Fresno's kind of isolated out there. There's no artist blogs to follow back then or anything like that. So
Will's class, and for those of you listening, Will is kind of a sort of a legendary art teacher, especially in the animation circles. And
I haven't seen him since college. I know he teaches over at the Union. I would like to go change my life.
Yeah, and he's in. He does some weeknight in Studio City as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So now what? So you've had this. You've been shown the doorway to the rabbit hole, and Will has kind of unlocked some potential in you.
Right.
What next?
Well, the animation program at CSUN was not very good at the time. It was really like, there was animation class, like traditional animation class. There was computer animation class, and there was animation drawing, which was basically life drawing. So, armed with my newfound passion, it's like there wasn't much of an avenue. I learned very quickly that it didn't take to actual animation very well, especially computer animation. So I just took it upon myself to get better my own way. So I started taking classes outside of college. And I would save money from, my jobs, like part-time jobs and stuff. And I would take classes at the Animation Academy with Charles Zimbillis, and I took a class with Steve Silver. And, so I started finding other avenues to learn because I felt like I wasn't getting it at school. And I took life drawing every semester, and like multiple life drawing classes. I took animation drawing and life drawing, and the credits didn't count, of course, but I took them anyway. So I just wanted to get better. And then, I graduated, and I still wasn't good enough. So I spent, 4 or 5 years getting better before I even got my first job, I think.
And what was that like? What was that like in your mind? I mean, as far as, did you struggle? Did you get frustrated? What seemed to be working? What kept you going? That's such a lone wolf kind of approach, which I know a lot of people listening to this interview are in that exact space. So I'd love to hear more about, just what that was like inside your head.
It was rough a lot of the times, really, especially after you graduate, because then you got to get a full-time job because you got to live. So, and then it's the full-time job, and then it's drawing afterwards. And, and then there's times you want to quit. And I had people tell me that maybe this wasn't the best avenue for me and all of that stuff. So it's rough. But then I just knew that this is really what I wanted to do. Like, and I would sit there. There were nights when I would think like, maybe I should do something else. Maybe this just isn't going to happen. And then I just, I was like, I can't imagine myself doing anything else. Like, I want this so bad that I have to do it. And I just mustered up the courage to keep going, I guess. Like, my mentality was always like, I took this kind of chip on my shoulder kind of attitude toward it. It's like, I'm just going to get as good as I can possibly get, and then they'll have to hire me. I don't care if I'm 50 when it happens. Like,
oh, that's awesome.
Like, I'm just going to get as good, like, I'm just going to keep getting better until they can't ignore me.
Yeah.
That was the mentality that I had. And then, and that was one day. And then the next day I'm like, oh, I just want to quit, So, this sappy, sad artist life that it is, like.
My friends were watching Tangled with their 2-year-old the other day, and I came into the room, and it was that scene where she's just going up and down and up and down. She's like, "This is the best day ever."
Yeah.
She's like, "I'm a horrible person." And I love that sequence. It cracks me up every time. But that's
amazing.
Very accurate.
Exactly what it feels like too. Sometimes it's like, I'm gonna do this. Your pencil raised in your hand, and then the next day you're like flat on your face on the floor, like give up. Everybody's too good. I'm never going to be good enough. Like,
oh, that's amazing. That is amazing. And so how did you get locked in? I mean, because it sounds to me like there was something that happened between Jim Lee fandom and the Will Weston class, or perhaps it was the Will Weston class, that a switch flipped in your mind where you now at this point in your story are able to say, I've got to do this, even in the dark times, even in the I've got to do this. So what's the difference? Because just fandom alone and just liking cartoons alone doesn't seem like the whole picture.
It's funny. I don't, that's a really good question, because I don't know what that switch would have been, because honestly, you saying that right now just kind of turned me on to that. Like, there must have been something. Like, why do I care so much? Like,
something where you realized you could do it. Something about maybe you being made aware of your own capability. Maybe that's what it is. Because when I was in the fandom Kid Justin drawing, nobody told me, it's a lot of time and practice and effort. There was nobody there to tell me that. So it was like either, I'm looking at my stuff when I'm 12 versus comic book artists and animation guys, and like, I'm not that good. I'll never be that good. And it's like, that's 12-year-old me saying this, Like, I thought you were just something, it was just something you were born with, when it's totally not. Maybe it is, like, in college, I got at least good enough to know, like, I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. And it's just like telling stories and drawing and making up characters and all this stuff. I mean, who could not love it, really? Right. And I think that's it too, is the creative aspect. It's like, once I got a taste of it, I couldn't see myself not creating. Like, I couldn't see myself behind a desk doing something non-creative, I guess. You'd already mentioned your grandfather, and what was it like, how was art seen in your family growing up, and was that something you were encouraged in, or? Oh, yeah. Totally. Yeah. My grandfather was an interior architect, and my dad is an architect. So he's actually a very good draftsman. I've seen some of his, like, life drawings and, stuff like that. So, but it was never really, my dad's not a artsy fartsy artist. Like, I'm an architect, this is my job. And, like, he likes to hunt and fish and all that stuff. So that's kind of his, his passion is like the outdoors versus, this is just my job kind of a thing. So, but it was never, I was never not encouraged to do it, but it was never really, like a thing. And he didn't know about that world either, because he's just an architect, he didn't know about the animation world and all that stuff. Like, he would teach me perspective and, how to draw trees and stuff, but they were the very, like, architectural trees, that you see. I'm a sucker for those, actually. I love it. Yeah, they're pretty amazing. The sort of all the detail disappears in the shadow. And yeah, exactly. Ryan Woodward does that. He takes that approach with a lot of his figure drawings, and it gets me every time, man. Right. Yeah, he did that, and then, like, I'd go, at my grandma's house, she has all these old drawings from him that, still lifes and stuff, which are, like, so good. I'm like, oh man, like, what the heck, Dad? Like, why aren't you giving me art lessons, when I don't know, like. Man, that's exciting. So it sounds to me like it's a soup of loving cartoons, and there's something about that you never let go of, which is great. Right. You never let go of just the love of animation, and then the kind of practicality from your family, and then it created this sort of mixture that then sounds like perhaps Will Weston was the catalyst that really set off the chemical reaction. Yeah, honestly, once I knew that there was something that I could attain in that world, that's when it was like, okay, pedal to the metal, let's do this, Yeah, because it requires a fair amount of confidence to even consider yourself capable of having a successful rock band. There's a certain kind of chip on your shoulder you have to have, I'm using that because that's your word. I wouldn't refer to it as that, but I make the world. No. There's a certain amount of confidence that you have to even set out on something like that. So it sounds like that stuff was there already, and it, like you're saying, it was the revelation of where you fit in that world that really. Yeah, and the one thing that I think my family really instilled in me when I was younger is that, I could do whatever I wanted to do as long as I worked really hard and tried. So it was always like, I can do whatever I want if I put my mind to it. I just needed to find what I wanted to put my mind to, And then once that, Will Weston thing happened, and then what was cool with the Will Weston class was the very last class, all of us had to wait outside, and he called us in individually, and he told us to bring our 5 favorite drawings, and he would go over our 5 favorite drawings and basically give us like a real critique, just one-on-one. And I took mine in there, and I was like, yeah,
I wanted to be a graphic designer when I started this class, and now I want to be a character designer. And he's like, you have a very good innate sense of drawing, and, you know, I think you could do it if you wanted to. He's like, but you're going to have to work really hard. And that was just the extra nitrous boost in the engine at that point. That was like, okay, like, so, you know, got this guy telling me like I could possibly do it. So, you know, there's no stopping me now.
So what do you think now in hindsight, what do you think is the difference between a demonstrated capability for drawing and character design?
Character. Storytelling. I really think that fundamentals are, to quote you, actually, fundamentals are forever. So you got to know your stuff. And then once you do that, it's figuring out why these characters exist. And, you know, and this is something like that I've actually just recently kind of really glommed onto, is it's all about the character, you know. So once you know that you can kind of draw, and then you've decided like, okay, I'm pretty good at drawing and now I want to be a character designer, what translates from drawing to character design is the actual character part. You know, like you've got the design part figured out. So now you have to figure out the character part, I guess, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. You talked about being a communicator on your blog recently.
And that's the thing that came up. And that's why it's like kind of a recent, you know, I kind of always have known it, but I didn't know I knew it until I started teaching. That's the great thing about teaching, is it, you know, reinforces all of these ideas. And it literally, like, communication was coming up. I would say communication every class, I think. I'm just a broken record, you know, like,
right.
These kids probably think I have no idea what I'm talking about because I talk about the same thing over and over again. So I was really kind of concerned that that's all I had to say. And once I kind of realized, like, maybe I shouldn't be concerned. Maybe it's just really important, you know, like, and it was just totally subconscious, and it just started coming out. And I was like, wait a minute, like, this makes complete sense. Like, and what I talk about on my blog is like, the design serves only to inform the character. It's great to push shapes and draw cool guns and all of this stuff, but if it doesn't make sense to the character, then it's useless. So the design is only there to reinforce what this character is about. And I think we have a very important job as character designers, because we should know who that character is the second when they come on to the screen without saying a word. It's like we should almost understand who that character is right off the bat.
Right. Walter Sobchak from The Big Lebowski.
Oh, yes, exactly. You know, like, there's tons of characters like that. And I think that's, you know, that's our job.
That's awesome. So Will gives you this charge of, you can do this character design thing. You have the drawing capability, but you're going to have to work hard. You then go start working, sounds like, kind of simultaneously on fundamentals and character design. Yeah. More or less. And you said for about 4 or 5 years, something like that?
Yeah, for about 4 or 5 years. And then I worked, like, you know, odd jobs here and there, like, not odd jobs, but, you know, just full-time, you know, mundane kind of jobs.
Sure.
Wow.
Had you started to become conscious of the character part yet? How did that merging between the drawing and the character? Where were you, you know, in your mind during that kind of second college? Your own, your self-guided self-guided college degree.
Well, it all kind of started happening, you know, like I said, it was almost subconscious. Like, I knew it was there, but I wasn't aware of it. And I wasn't really made aware of it until a few years in, when I started to realize, wait a minute, like, telling the story is more important than, you know, just knowing how to draw, you know. So taking, you know, gesture drawing classes, like, I've taken classes with Mark McDonald, and I think he was a big push in that, story-wise. You know, why is the model doing what the model's doing? You know, like, infuse the character into that, you know, like, she's not just making a pose dressed like Dorothy from Wizard of Oz, you know, like, what is she doing? You know, like, what's the story behind it? So, and that's when it really started clicking in there. And I think that's when I started to get exponentially better, is when I started connecting those dots, you know, and it wasn't just drawing cool shapes and cool characters and stuff like that. It was, you know, when I started thinking about, like, who this character is and why are they doing what they're doing, I think that's when I started to get better.
Okay, so describe your first paying gigs.
All right. It was exciting, you know. The other part of my story, I guess, is I got a job at Disney Interactive, moderating online chat logs, you know, and that was interesting, you know. watching these kids' online conversations that's fun. Lots of stories there, but we'll save that for another time. So I worked there for like a year, and I was like, and the reason I actually took that job was like, I'm going to work my way into the art department. Watch this, So I started like, I actually got to know a couple of the artists upstairs, and then a year later they laid off my entire department.
Yeah.
Like,
This is in North Hollywood.
yes.
Yeah.
So laid off my entire department, 200 some odd people. But, say what you will about Disney, they gave me a great severance package. And that's when I really, decided like, this is it. This is my time. Like I think I had like 6 months worth of pay coming in or something, and I had some money saved up. So it was like 6 months.
Nice.
Portfolio time. And I treated it like a job, like 9 to 5. I was at my desk drawing, working on my portfolio. Most times, like, I would draw into the night, like my girlfriend would go to bed at like, 11 or something, and I'd just draw until 1 or 2 in the morning and then wake up and do it all over again. So yeah, so getting my first gig was like, that was exciting. And it was actually in-house at a little gaming studio, and they were making a Facebook game. And I got in there, and, one of the reasons that this kind of comes back to the character thing. So, I was doing a little bit of everything, like environment design and stuff like that. So one of the tests was to design a building that would go in this game. And it's all in Flash, and I'm terrible with Flash. Like, I'm horrible in Flash. So this test took me ungodly amount of hours to do. And I'm just like cursing at the computer the whole time. Like, I hate this. Like, why can't I just draw this? Like, So I designed a building, and I didn't just design a building. I designed like this military headquarters, and it had like all these like weird cut-ins on the sides, and like a helipad and air conditioners on top, and like all these like kind of story elements, like so that you knew exactly what this building was right when you looked at it. And I went in for an interview, and they're like, we've never seen anybody do a building like that. Like, everybody just gives us like a skyscraper. And I was like, really? And then as the interview progressed, I was like, I don't know Flash very well. I almost don't know Flash at all. And I told them straight up, because I don't want to get a job doing something where, I don't know what I'm doing. And I told them straight up, like, this took me a very long time to do. And they're like, we don't care. We love that building. Like, you're hired. So, that was my first gig. And then, of course, I get like 3 freelance jobs at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
Because I had just put all my feelers out there, So all of a sudden I'm slammed, but I'm loving every minute of it.
Yeah.
I get home at 6 and then work until 2 a.m. on my freelance gigs, But I'm like, yes, this is the dream, right? Like, this is great.
And what were those freelance gigs like?
The freelance gigs were cool. One of them was like creating like it was actually a After Effects animated thing for Paramount Pictures, I think.
Were you doing the animation too for that?
I was doing like, because it's After Effects, so I was doing like the blinks and stuff like that. Cool. So I wasn't actually like in betweening or anything like that. But yeah, I was doing and I was doing the backgrounds and everything. So that was pretty cool. And then, like I had actually some character design ones for a small little video game and stuff. But man, yeah, it was cool. It was a lot of fun. Little jobs, like nothing huge or anything, but it was.
Oh yeah, great.
Money, so.
And were you being art directed? For example, with the backgrounds especially, it sounds like there was some sort of evolution that happened for you there as well in regard to backgrounds. Was that separate from, did you start becoming conscious of animation backgrounds? How did you develop in that area in regard to backgrounds?
Like I started to realize if I wanted to be I'm doing air quotes, visual development artist, that I kind of had to know a little bit about backgrounds. So I started to get interested in those as well. I think I would say Brett Bean actually helped me out a lot with that. Uh-huh. We were hanging out and talking a lot, and he was like, well, you should know this too, and and he actually helped me with a lot of trying to figure it out for myself, because it is a different beast than character design. So he gave me some great advice on backgrounds as well, and so I started to dabble in them. Like I'm not great with them, but I can do them, How
did you meet Brett?
I met him at CTN, actually.
Oh, of course.
So, as I meet everybody at
CTN. Yeah, that's the best, man.
On the internet and then at CTN in real life. So, but yeah, like CTN it's definitely the best. That's where I met you, right?
Yep.
That's where we met. Yeah, you gave me a scathing portfolio review. I remember.
I'm famous for my scathing portfolio.
Yes.
Did I actually review your portfolio at some point?
You did. I think that was the first time I met you.
Oh,
I think
wow.
you were I think you were still at the Disney booth.
Oh, wait, was I reviewing portfolios for Disney at the time? I mean,
Yes.
was it like a formal thing? Oh, wow.
Yes. Yeah.
That's funny because I think of myself as always having been a fan purely of your work. I just think of all I remember is like going by your booth and seeing your books and just going, oh my God, I wish I could draw like that.
No, I showed you my portfolio. You told me to quit, and then I cried.
Yeah, right, exactly. I don't believe that. That's amazing though. So what did we?
You were just by yourself.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
all right.
And it was funny is, well, you weren't by yourself. There was a bunch of other people there, but like I don't remember talking to anybody else.
Uh-huh.
I was just waiting in line for a review. So what's funny about that one was like I showed it to the TV people because I knew like I wasn't really feature quality yet at that time. So I showed it to the TV people and they told me to go talk to the feature people. And then the feature people told me to go talk to like the Tunes,
Right.
studio people. Like I just got passed around to like,
Uh-huh.
Several different people over there. So
I'm glad you bring this up because there's something, one of the things I love about your style is that it is simultaneously dimensional and graphic. And that is, well, I'm a sucker for very stylized, flat character designs.
that's one of the better compliments I think I've gotten.
Really?
That's really like what I try to do.
It's my favorite thing about your work, and it's why you're one of my favorite artists. You're turning the forms, like there's an actual drawing there, but then it has this great kind of. And there have been a few movies that pulled this off pretty well. I think Madagascar and the a Disney movie that is not very often mentioned, Home on the Range.
Yeah.
Which it has some awesome character designs.
Oh yeah,
and that rabbit character is fantastic.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and the horse, the Cuba Gooding Jr. horse is amazing. So anyway, and there's other examples too, but I've always been drawn to that, and I wish feature animation studios did that more.
Me too.
Because it's having your cake and eating it too.
Exactly. And I think that's where the Jose Lopez stuff comes into my style still, which is my style, air quotes again.
Right. Exactly. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Whatever that means.
Whatever that means. Right. But yeah, that's where that comes in. And then I knew to work in like feature or something like that, I had to understand how all of this stuff like lives in 3D space. So then you start to, it's like, you have these graphic shapes, but then you start to realize, okay, so what if this was actually like in 3D? Like, what would it look like? So you have to convey all of that stuff too. But I don't remember what we were talking about before that.
Well, we were talking about the recruiting stuff at CTN, and I wanted to make that point, but then I also wanted to highlight something else, and that is that when you're doing something inventive, there will be less people who will just get it right away.
Right.
And that's something to keep in mind, Now, I've just given a lot of people license to not listen to anyone, and to kind of just go be bad, or be mediocre and then not listen to anyone. So you can really shoot yourself in the foot with this advice. But again, this is why I talk about the circle of trust so often, is because when you have people who you trust, to whom you've given permission to call you out, when you're being lazy or arrogant or whatever, it becomes a little more self-governing, and they'll be the ones to tell you, no, I really think you're doing something special and inventive here, and a lot of people aren't going to get it, but it is really, really good.
I think that's actually a really good point. And I just talked to some of my students about this. There's art and then there's design, and art I feel like doesn't really have any rules. It's like anything is art, whatever. And then there's design, which is very much like has kind of rules to it, and it serves to communicate things. And then like what we do is actually kind of somewhere in the middle, right? We have to communicate things from a story standpoint, from a character standpoint, or whatever. We're communicating things, but it also has to be artistic and pretty and, be appealing and pleasing to the eye. So like one of my students put up their character design for a critique, and one of the, something was, I can't remember if it was like a hand or something was larger on one side. And they're like, well, I meant for it to be like that, like pulling the artsy fartsy card,
Right.
And I was like, nope, like the BS, you can't do that, and it has to communicate like right away, or it's wrong. This isn't art, it's design. Like, we're communicating. And if it's not communicating right, you failed. You know what I'm saying? Like, that wasn't that mean, but and I right off the bat, I called her on her DS, I think it was, or her, I can't remember. But I called them on it, and I was like, you can't do that. You have to have a reason for doing what you're doing. This isn't fine art class. Like, you can't splatter paint on a canvas and say that it means depression.
Right.
So, and I think that's a good point. Like, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, because right. That's great, art and design, and it's easy when you're being given the assignment. It's easy when you're being hired, because we have that. We can go, well, Disney needs it this way. They have an art director. They've got a whole production. You just have to. That's simple. It gets harder when it is you putting together your own portfolio or doing a more open-ended assignment for a class or something. That's when it's really easy to just be like, it's just what I was feeling like at the time. And well, great. Explore the design with emotion and no boundaries, and that's fine. But then eventually you do have to get to this point where if I started speaking in Dutch all of a sudden in the middle of this interview, only the Dutch listeners would be able to understand. And actually they wouldn't, because my Dutch would probably be atrocious. But even they wouldn't understand. You have to consider the message and the limitations of what you're trying to. What
consider your audience.
Right, exactly. Not what you were trying to communicate, how to help them hear it.
Exactly. Exactly. Very well said.
If you're going to make the hand bigger, then make them way bigger.
Exactly.
Do Wreck-It Ralph or something, and then it's a character, right? He needs the big hands to pound the building.
Right. And that's what it was. It was like one something was bigger than the other something. I was like, this looks bigger, it looks like off. Like, well, it was supposed to be like that. I was like, well, then you have to make it way bigger that it's on purpose.
Exactly.
And you have to put, like if it's an arm, you have to make it like
Hellboy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like there's no, I get right off the bat that hand is supposed to be bigger than the other hand,
Right, as opposed to just poorly drawn.
As opposed to just like, oh, it's art. I can do whatever I want,
Justin responded to rejection by focusing on the work. And what are some ways that you can respond to rejection by focusing on the work instead of going into a downward spiral of sorrow and despair? What can you do? What are some specific things that you can do when you experience rejection? And you will. We all will. Well, if we aspire to anything, we will. Go to chrisoatley.com/JR1 and join the conversation in the comments. And of course, you can respond to anything else that resonated with you in part 1 of the interview with Justin Rodrigues. You can connect with Justin at justindraws.com. Juan.
Hello.
You're here.
Yeah. It's incredible, Chris.
It's great to have you, man. Absolutely great to have you. Let's just dive right in. We can get to your breakthrough story in a minute. Mm-hmm. But I'd like to give the listeners just a little bit of background and kind of connect the dots from what made you fall in love with art in the first place, and then how did you get to the Oatley Academy?
Okay. So, hello, my name is Juan. For those that do not know me, I'm from Spain, and I'm a student at the Oatley Academy. I started in the path to art very early on, actually. I have a little anecdote that I always tell my friends, and my mom is always kind to remind me of this. I've been always the biggest fan of the Ninja Turtles. And actually, I was really, really big on the figures.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. So whenever someone asks me, like, what do you want to do when you're older? I always said, I want to work in the factory that makes the Ninja Turtle figures.
Oh, wow.
I had that really clear. Like, from the moment I was like 5 or 6 years old, I wanted to create, toys. I wanted to create entertainment, kind of, because I spent my whole childhood making up stories with these figures. And then I started right after that, like when I was a bit older, maybe like 8, I started drawing them, like posing them and looking at the TV series and trying to copy what I saw, buying some comics as well. So yeah, actually, it was the Ninja Turtles that got me started in the arts path.
I didn't think it would be possible to like you any more than I already did, Juan, and now I do. Now even more. Okay, so what about color and paint and those kinds of things? Was it mostly just drawing, or how did that work?
Yeah,
the actual art.
Actually, it was mostly drawing. Right after this stage in my life where I was really big on the Ninja Turtles, I turned to comics and specifically to manga. So manga usually comes in very ink and style, like very stylized and very clean. In general, depends on the artist, and no color. So I love that aesthetic, and I started copying that like crazy, like Dragon Ball Z or Inuyasha or things like that, Ranma. I love those comics. And then, in school, I guess we all have had this, like people would ask for drawings, like, hey, can you draw me? Like I was the drawing guy in class. So, yeah. Can you draw me in this place? Or can you put me instead of Goku from Dragon Ball, can you draw my face? And stuff like that. Yeah, so.
That's awesome. And you're in Barcelona. Is that where you grew up?
No.
Okay.
I originally come from Malaga, which is in the south of Spain. Oh my,
so beautiful.
Then there was sudden stop. Like my biggest fans, my parents, with their best intentions in mind, I always have this clear. They suggested that maybe I shouldn't pursue a career in the arts because that wouldn't give me money enough to survive. I couldn't really support myself as an adult being an artist. So they suggested that maybe I could just keep on drawing while I studied a more serious career. And I did. Actually, I did. And I kind of stopped drawing, actually. I didn't pay too much attention to drawing anymore after I was, I guess, 17. That's when I joined the university. Actually, I was living right next door to the university, so it was all against me. Like they had a very a big university over there that taught everything, like linguistics, literature, science, everything except arts. So I couldn't even have chosen art, fine arts, for example. There wasn't any available. So instead I chose English because my sister is a translator. So cool. I always have looked up to my sister. She's a very smart girl, and she is now a teacher at university, actually.
Wow.
And back then she was studying translation, interpreting, and I thought, well, yeah, English is probably good. Like I see that she's very happy with what she's studying, so I'll just try and, do this degree. And I spent like 5 years in the university. I finished. I graduated, but I wasn't. I was happy with what I had learned. Suddenly, I could speak another language. I could, talk about literature. I could analyze linguistics. But I wasn't happy about the careers that this gave me. Like I couldn't figure out like what should I do with all this knowledge. So I decided just to look elsewhere. And where did I look? Well, actually, I looked back. I checked my an old dusty folder I had. Yeah, I found drawings, and I saw, oh wow, I used to do this like 5-6 years ago. Why did I stop doing it?
Wow. Oh my God.
And it was about the same time I was doing Erasmus, which is a program that they have in the European Union where you can go and study a year abroad. I was in England, and I went into, this was total chance. I went into a news agent, and I found, I was looking at the magazines, and I saw one called Imagine FX. And I was amazed, like, wow, that's when I found out about concept art. Like, wow, this is something that people actually do for a living. This is amazing. I subscribed to the magazine just because I loved the drawings. I wasn't really that big on drawing yet, but I was interested in seeing this. And then I don't remember exactly which number of magazine was it, but I found a link. They spoke about this very place, the ArtCast. They spoke about you,
Oh, sweet.
Chris.
Oh,
I don't know if
that's
you
awesome.
remember, but they publicized the
Oh,
ArtCast.
yeah. Oh, I remember.
Just as
Yeah.
it came out, the first one.
Yeah, I've received so much help and support from Claire that there's no way I could ever even begin to repay her, actually. Yeah, okay, so that was, I think, 2009, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, just so the listeners know, we actually have that full interview available on chrisoatley.com. There was a sort of a slightly longer version. Obviously, they trimmed it down to fit the page in Imagine Effects. So if you're interested, you can go read that article. And of course, we'll link to it from the blog post associated with this podcast episode.
Then after this, after the university, I started working as a teacher, an English teacher, because
cool.
I had to support myself somehow. I was finished with uni, so I had to do something. So I started being a private teacher, helping out kids in high school.
Cool. That's awesome. And so helping them with their English.
Yeah, but on the side, then I started reading up more Imagine Effects, listening to the podcast, and I was like, yeah, why don't I really do this? I put myself into this. I'm attracted to it, viscerally. So why not give it a shot? So I started drawing again, but then I started I bought a small tablet, the cheapest Wacom tablet I could get. I still keep my bamboo. It's
that's awesome.
It's really scratched. Someday I will, hang it up on a wall.
Yeah, exactly. A trophy.
And yeah, I started drawing digitally. I started with a new medium because, Imagine FX told me to, so why not?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, that's basically how more or less I've been for the last, I guess, until 2012 that I started. I think 2012 or 13 that I started in Oatley Academy.
Oh, right, the Magic Box. Yeah, that was May of 2013. Yeah, and you were one of the first ones in, because I think that's kind of how you and I started to get to know each other. And then I saw you on DeviantArt and recognized you there. And I was like, oh, this is, okay, JBZ, got it. I didn't know the J was for one at the time, but I saw, you had just those three letters. And then I remember thinking oh my gosh, this guy's super good. And I just loved your art. And then we just kind of started interacting. And yeah, but my point is I think because you joined Magic Box so quickly, I think that helped. I guess we connected quickly because of that. And I was like, oh, anytime there are those people who just jump right on something when you do it, it's like, because there's so much risk involved. And, I'm so afraid that it's going to fail. So it just means the world when someone's like, oh, I'll go, I'll help, and it's like, oh my God, thank you so much, And so that was what, one reason why you stood out to me. And then we did a critique together or something, right? Wasn't there... Were you on one of the Magic Box critique videos?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right after I joined, you made one of those. If I'm not mistaken, it was about October, November, something like that.
Okay. Cool.
Of 2013.
Yeah, it was. I was in there too, and I met you, and I'm like, this dude is awesome. I love his heart. I'm going to be his friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. Oh, hey, Lenny here.
Hello.
Metro Ninja.
Oh my God.
I'll just vanish again.
Where'd you go? Well, yeah, it's like you're talented, Juan, and then you're so kind. That's the thing. You have just such a depth of kindness and humanity, and I just, man, I'll tell you what, you're a good guy. I want to be like you.
Oh. Yeah, I really want to be like you, but
well, I guess we all win then. Everyone wins.
Yeah, really grateful for your words. Thank you, really. I have forgotten to mention that between, when I started with the magazines and your podcast and then Oatley Academy, I went to a traditional illustration school with actual, classes in person. So I moved to Madrid for this. because in Malaga there wasn't any available. But it didn't teach me what I needed. Like I'm not being fair. They taught me a lot of technique, but only technique. And I found out that I was missing on something. Like there was something about my art that was kind of lifeless. Like I could render for hours on hours, but then the characters wouldn't have much interest, and the backgrounds wouldn't be, really fitting, or I wouldn't even know about how to compose a scene. Like I didn't know the rules, if there was any rule actually.
Right.
So I decided, I heard about this opening of Painting Drama, which already had gone like for 2 iterations. And
let me just stop you right there. I'm sorry, Juan, but you just have to make a tiny mention that you worked on the circus.
What?
Oh yeah.
Yes. I will not let you go away with that.
Wait, hang on.
I worked as a dishwasher in the Cirque du Soleil.
What?
Yes, he did.
That is insane. So you got to see the show and meet the performers. And was there any perspective that you gained from your interaction with the Cirque du Soleil team that you now bring to your art or your experience there? Is there anything that has influenced your art at all?
Actually, maybe not about the actual Cirque du Soleil, but the way they worked. They were very structured. Like they had a very strong structure. Like they would follow the rules, and they would actually have everything, every instruction, every method of working, every doubt in booklets, or they would actually help me through like the way the kitchen worked, and then I would be able just to create my own way of working inside the kitchen. Like they allowed me some liberty, like where I would go and pick up the dishes and where should I drop them off. So it sounds very menial, but at the end of the day, they gave me like a very structured way of working, and then I started applying that way of working to my art. Actually, I think. Because I would be one of those people that would, create 1,000 layers in Photoshop, for example, and then I would, forget where I put the layer of that would represent the hair, and then I would start like assigning layers on top of the others, layer styles on top of the others. It was crazy, like a crazy nightmare. So from there I started being way more organized in the way I dealt with working in general. So that was something I learned.
Well, that's cool. And so you were helping the students through that? Was that the job you were doing all the way through your time during Painting Drama as well?
Not during Painting Drama. I made a choice to actually stop teaching for the duration of Painting Drama, because I had heard about stories about people breaking down during Painting Drama. Right. So I decided, okay, let's take it easy. It's summer. It's going to be low on classes anyway. So I'll just stop altogether and pour myself into this.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Oh boy, was it a good choice, man.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
Me and Juan, we were already friends before Painting Drama. And I remember him telling me like, Anya, if we both make it to Painting Drama class, I will quit my job. I will tell my students I'm not teaching them English anymore, and I will move on with my life. I'm like, oh my God, just take it easy. And I don't want you to starve. I'm like, come on. I'm like, no. And then like a week later, he was like, Anya, I made it in. I'm like, yeah, me too. And now what? I don't want to teach them anymore. I'm like, oh God.
I'm glad you didn't tell me that, Juan, because I probably would have been very, very anxious.
I was.
No way, man. It was totally worth it.
And so you, so you did Painting Drama, but then comes a big moment, right?
Yeah, in October, I got a call from someone that had seen I had seen a job offer, but all through Painting Drama and actually all the academy, whenever I saw a job offer, I would just instantly apply. Yeah. So I would apply everywhere, like nonstop, always showing my portfolio. But actually, someone replied to my email about the 2nd of October. and they said, "Hey, we're interested in you. You know, there's a new studio that forming up in Barcelona. It's across the country from here.
Yeah.
Almost in France. But yeah, I was determined to get the job because, you know, it sounded really, really good. It was a game studio. They did social games, like the type of games that you would see on Facebook, on game portals, and also Android and Apple platforms and so on. But they had a big interest on making narrative driven games. Like, it wouldn't be the usual, hey, let's play this for like, I don't know, 20 minutes and then you forget about it. Like, no. They wanted lasting experience because
Awesome.
their most of their audience is actually people that have been with their games for a long time. Like, they're interested in the characters and their storylines and everything. It was amazing. Like, wow, I'm getting invited to try my hand in a gaming studio. I'm really big on games, by the way. That is really interested in narrative. And I just finished a course that it was all about composition and narrative. I was like, wow,
amazing.
This must be a signal. I need to try this. So yeah, they asked me for an artist. I know these things are very tricky, but I decided to do it. It wasn't too much, and it was actually something totally unrelated to anything they had on their website. So I just checked, just in case they were, you know, kind of getting free ideas out of artists. No, this wasn't the case. They were trying for, you know, just to see my general knowledge about creating a character and creating a UI. UI is the user interface for games. Basically, they were testing my graphic design knowledge, of which I had none in my portfolio. So I thought, you know, it's only fair they're asking me.
Sure, yeah.
Because I had listed in my CV that I had some graphic design knowledge, but I didn't have any on my portfolio. So yeah, I decided to do it. So I spent the 3rd of October, which, by the way, is my birthday, working on this artist the whole day. So I didn't celebrate my birthday that day, but I was, you know, applying for, I don't know, the opportunity of my life. I took it really, really seriously.
Oh, come on. Your sister came up with a cake. I was online with you. Don't be a liar.
Oh, come on. I was making it really dramatic.
Big fat liar. I was there with you all the time. I know the details. Yeah. You don't fool me.
I need to, stop a moment and thank Anya like forever, because she was there the whole time, like supporting me, giving me some ideas. You know, like,
it was just because it was fun to see you desperating over work. It was really fun. You were like, oh my God, I can't make. Yes, you can. You did.
Yeah, I cannot thank you. Actually, thank you both enough, because it was, you know, through Chris that I got the knowledge, you know, to get this art test done, and also through Anya that gave me, you know, the strength.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
Moments, so,
that is awesome. Yeah, well, you deserve it, my friend. So what has the adjustment been like? The transition and then working in the studio, and what's that been like for you? And what challenges have you faced? Artistically, I mean.
Yeah, it's a life-changing event, actually, because, you know, moving to another city, I mean, I already had that experience, but Barcelona is a bustling city. A lot of people, a lot of culture all around, and the rhythm, like the speed of life here is really quick, like comparing to Malaga, which is a very laid-back kind of style of living. In the studio, it's what I would have expected in a way, because I knew that quick turnarounds are almost the norm in this kind of jobs. And that was, in fact, what I encountered. They wanted things really quickly. And I was used to taking my time. So I've been, for the last 4 months, adjusting to this. Like, it's still a work in progress thing. Being confident enough in my designs, so I don't need to create as many drawings just to reach that final goal. So actually, I'm spending more time at the moment thinking than drawing. So
wow.
I actually draw or attempt to draw what they're asking me. So far it's going well, so I'm quite happy. But yeah, it's a work in progress thing. I need to be faster, and the way to be faster actually is to be slower in a way. Is to actually think first. What do they want? What can I produce? And which is the best technique or process for this to actually happen?
That's amazing. And can you talk a little bit about style? Like, your understanding of style and how you have adapted to the style and the needs of the project.
Mm-hmm.
And are you working on one project or lots of different projects at the same time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the style is that's a good question because I always thought I'm going to be a sci-fi or fantasy illustrator. I always had this more or less clear in my mind. So I always went towards a style that was a bit more mature in a way, still, realistic, but stylized. So I would try to get some kind of try to reach a comic style, maybe, let's say like an European comic style. So quite, rendered and realistic. And then I also decided to put in my portfolio, let's put also a bit of cartoonish things, just in case someone is interested to see what I can also create in a cartoonish style. But yeah, I got a job that actually is about drawing cartoons, drawing in a very cute way, which I'm not used to.
Wow.
But yeah, I like to think that I'm getting a bit better now that I'm doing it. I have been doing it for 4 months. It's difficult, to adjust, but I really want to because the work is amazing. I really like my colleagues and the company. They pamper us, they treat us really well. This week we got our Cintiqs. I'm really happy about this.
Oh, that's awesome.
So yeah, I don't know if anyone is interested to see this. The kind of games that we do is called the company is called Game House. It's an international company, and I cannot say what I'm working on at the moment, but it's a single project.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I'm gonna be working on it for this year.
What do you think, or have you had a chance to talk to your art director or your producer or whoever hired you? What do you think it was about your work and about you that helped them make the decision to hire you? What do you think was the bridge there?
It's a really good question, Chris, because they mentioned one that is a personal project. And I started a personal project when you first created a series of posts about this, create your own art project.
Uh-huh.
So I decided, I'm going to do one. I started a never-ending story project.
Oh, it's my favorite. Seriously, Juan, you are my long-lost brother. I am absolutely certain about it. What? Never-ending Story is one of my favorite things ever made.
Yeah, man, it's such a well of imaginative creatures and story. It's amazing. I wanted to create something, that was really big on dreams and imagination. So I decided, Never-ending Story. That's I first saw the movie, which I absolutely loved. But then I read the book, and I found out that they had left out so much good stuff. I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
I want to create all those lost stories that people haven't heard about because, the movie is so big that many people don't know that it's actually also a book.
Right.
And the book is twice the size. So, I started on a project of drawing the characters of Never-ending Story in an animated style. Just imagining myself as a concept artist in a version of the book that would be for a TV series, maybe. Yeah, so I never got the chance to continue on the project. I really want to get back on it when I have some spare time, which I don't have much lately. But I want to go back to it, and it was such a great news to hear them say hey, I remember the rock eater. I had created a rock eater, and they said, "Yeah, we love the rock eater. It was really nice." And also, Bastian, very good design. So yeah.
Well, that's cool.
They like that.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That yet again, the personal project is the thing that opens the door. That's amazing. And I mean, obviously, that wasn't the only thing. It was the whole picture of who you are as a person and an artist. But it's just interesting to me that the personal project helped to communicate those things. Mm-hmm. That's amazing.
I think it really shows that when you are enjoying working on something, it shows on your work, and it's especially true for a personal project.
Yeah. Juan, could you please share with us your link? And if the listeners want to get in touch with you online, what are your favorite social media platforms?
Actually, I have in my website, I have a list of, I have a few links to my
cool.
email,
yes.
Facebook. So maybe they could actually go there, which is jbcarts.com.
As in Juan Bautista Zambrana.
Yeah, that's it. And over there you have my portfolio, which sadly hasn't been updated since I got the job, but I will update this.
Oh, well, Juan, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It's been so inspiring to hear about the amazing opportunities that you have been cultivating in your own career. It's incredible. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome, but also I need to thank you for everything you're doing with the Academy and in general in the art scene, because it's incredible. You're gonna leave a lasting impression on the art world. Trust me on this. It's amazing what you're doing. I got to know you, for free basically on the podcast, which is a long investment you've been doing for a long time, and you still keep it free, which is mind-boggling. And still you managed to create something that is so good, so straight to the point, and so informative. It's a pleasure, to be here. So thank you, really.
Thanks, Juan. This podcast is a production of the Oatley Academy of Concept Art, Illustration, and Visual Storytelling. I'm Chris Oatley, your host and producer. Our editor is Kevin Chandler. Production support was provided by Travis Bond and Anya Marcos. Our theme music is provided by Storybook Steve. Recurring musical segments are provided by Storybook Steve and Kangaralian. We are a proud member of the Visual Voice Podcasting Network, and you can find all of our available shows at chrisoatley.com/shows. Oh, man. Yeah.
You're great. You both are great.
Oh, yeah. Anya, too. Let's not forget about the ninja over there lurking in the shadows. The angel ninja who now is laughing like a goblin. I don't understand. But it's okay. She changes. She's a shapeshifter.